for the session Bangladesh a Troubled Saga. I respectfully invite Major Singh and Brigadier Agarwal on the stage for our session. Today, we turn our gaze to a nation born from struggle, a saga etched in sacrifice and resilience, Bangladesh. As Rabindranath Tagore, whose words resonate deeply with both India and Bangladesh, wrote, "Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, the dream of a free and independent Bangladesh was hard won." But the journey has been complex, marked by both triumphs and tribulations. Today, we delve into the troubled saga, seeking to understand its past, its present, and its potential future. Guiding us through this important historical and geopolitical discussion is Major Chandrakant Singh, VRC, a veteran of the 1971 war, a conflict that birthed a nation, wounded in action and awarded the Vir Chakra for his gallantry. Major Singh embodies the courage and sacrifice that defined the pivotal moment in history. His experience extends beyond the battlefield. Having served with the United Nations peacekeeping force in Palestine, he is also a chronicler of that momentous period. The author of 4 books on Bangladesh Liberation War, ensuring that the stories of courage and resilience are not forgotten. Joining Major Singh is Brigadier Sanjay Agarwal, Sena Medal and Bar, a distinguished officer whose career has spanned key roles in national security and strategic planning. From serving as security advisor to the Ministry of Home Affairs to advising the government of Seychelles, Brigadier Agarwal brings a wealth of experience in understanding geopolitical complexities. Twice awarded by the President of India for gallantry, he is a testament to leadership and valor. His insights into the region's dynamics will be invaluable to our discussion. I would like you all to have a big round of applause for our veterans.
So like me, there are a whole lot of backbenchers. So it's a good idea if you come in front. There's no issues. It's equally and happy to get in. So can we start now? What's your thing now?
Yes, I request you just to start the session.
Those at the back, I promise you, if you come in the front, I will not bite you.
Please, all the seats that we're taking, please come in front. Please take the front seat, all of the audience. That'd be grateful.
So Paritosh announced something when he was introducing Major Chandrakant, and he used the word VRC. Is that a word in our vocabulary? What is this VRC? I think he mispronounced it, no? What is VRC? Okay, VR is voluntary retirement. So mathematically you got 66%, but VRC is a different world. It is gallantry in the face of the enemy. It's the 3rd highest award in the country for gallantry. Paramvir Chakra, Mahavir Chakra and Vir Chakra. This gentleman that I have the honor to be speaking to is a Mahavir Chakra, and thank you for your spontaneous claps, because like an anchor I don't ask for claps. Well done.
My wife calls it Ganchakar, not me.
Oh, that's familiarity breeds contempt. They don't ignore that. So ladies and gentlemen, we have a good session today, and I am thankful to all of you for being here, because this gentleman, Major Chandrakant Singh, he was commissioned in 1963. How many of us were born then? I think about 7 of us here. I can make out. And he was not born on 1963. He was born in the army as an officer in 4 guards. Now, how many of you are alive when he was born in 1943? Stumped. Second, he has the honor to have personal involvement with the 1971 war. The books that he's written, etc., that's apart. personal involvement, not as a researcher only, not as academic only, but he has served there in the Mizo Hills in 1971 with General Sagat Singh, who is the architect of the whole thing. Third, this gentleman has personal friendly relations with the husband of Begum Khalida Zia. Who's Khalida Zia? Sheikh Hasina's counterpart. Who was her husband? Major Zia. Major Zia has spent time in his tent. हम लोग तंबू में रहते हैं. And not once, not one evening, a number of evenings in the summer of 1971. That is the level of involvement of the gentleman that we have to speak to you on this. But there is a danger. And I have been speaking to him in detail. I got carried away in the flow of his narrative. And the danger is that we will dwell on the past and then there'll be no time for the present. So that's my job. I've got a timer which I start now. It'll buzz me. Because ultimately what I want to do is, very briefly, we've discussed this over. Sir will go over the geography because it is geography which shapes events and history. And after the geography, a very brief history, the earlier history by Professor Sengupta and the book by John Marshall, he will just vary a sentence or two because that's academic. Then he'll come to the history of the events pre-1946. And I'm sure he's going to start with something around the partition of Bengal 1905, which my friend Tamal has been educating me for the last 3 years. He's got that entire history backward. You shake him in his sleep and he gives me a 5-minute lecture. I said, who was this guy? He'll say so and so. And then 1911 when it merged again. And then coming to 1946, Maulana Azad's prophecy that Bangladesh, that East Pakistan, rather Pakistan then, will separate in 25 years. And to the dot he was correct. And he will also speak about the freedom of the press and the massacre of Hindus on the Meghna Bridge. These things we don't know about, and he'll be very brief. So wherever he's saying a sentence, my request is to pay attention to him because he'll go fast. The aim of going fast is then we come to 1971. What is India's role in the Mukti Bahini, etc.? He'll speak about that. And then what happened in the aftermath of the war. And I'm sure he's going to cover a record, which I won't steal his thunder by saying what record India made. It's a world record in good governance. And then he will come to what happened in the last 6 months, which I call now. What is in the now? And those issues I will deal with then. And then what is going to happen in the future? What are the problems of Bangladesh, for Bangladesh? And then most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, questions that you may have to ask him. We will take as many. I have kept time for it. And those that are not answered, he will be available in the interaction area thereafter. So this is the canvas that Sir is going to cover. Ready to go? Sir, please, the floor is yours about the geography and the initial history of Bangladesh. Please.
Before I come to the geography and history, I want to ask a counter question to the audience. How many of you are Indians? Oh, sorry. I want to ask you a question. How many of you are Indians? Put up your hands. How many of you are proud of being Indians? Everyone. Can I ask this young lady here, why are you proud to be an Indian? We are a poor nation, we hear of rapes, murders and everything. Why are you proud of being an Indian? Yes. Very right, very glad that you answered it this way. But it's not only the legacy of the past, it is the legacy of the present that also we should be proud of. And I'm going to go a little off script and begin with what in his time, the world's most famous newspaper correspondent, Sidney Schanberg of New York Times, Pulitzer Prize winner. He was the hero of a film called The Killing Fields. What he wrote about the Indian Army. And that is, we are Indians and the Indian Army is yours. You should be proud of also. Sidney Schanberg writes, I don't like sitting around armies, praising armies. I don't like armies because armies mean wars. But this Indian army was something. They were great all the way. There was never a black mark. I lived with the officers. I walked, I rode with the Jawans, and they were all great. Sure, some of them were scared. At first, they wouldn't be human if they went, but I never saw a man flinch because he was scared. There was tremendous spirit in the Indian Army, and it did one good to experience it. I have seen our boys in Vietnam, and this army was different. Their arms and equipment aren't as good, but what they had, they used with effect, and boy, could they improvise. I saw heavy recoilless guns carried on shoulders, big guns pushed across marshes like ox carts by Jawans, villagers, officers. Everybody was in it together. This is high praise coming to Indian Army and to Indians from an American journalist and the most famous journalist of his time. And the other reason, which he sort of mentions in passing, is the Pakistani army raped 2 million Bangladesh women. Not one case of rape or molestation of a woman was raised against any of our Jawans. The Jawans are Indians like us. Now this is a record which is unique to any army in the world. And we should all be proud of it. We as Indians are decent and human beings. The American army in the Second World War, they entered Europe. In the first week, they had 3,000 rapes of French women, and they had gone there as allies. So we don't want any sermonizing from the West. Now I come to the core subject of our talk. Pardon the digression. Bengal is a riverine country. 3 of the world's greatest rivers flow into Bengal. The Ganga, the Brahmaputra, in the west of East Bangladesh, and in the east is the Meghna, which rises in the hills of Meghalaya and the other northeastern states. They are, in places, they are 25 miles wide. And I'm talking of in the normal season, not in the monsoons. In the monsoons, half of Bangladesh is flooded. Now that is the type of terrain in which we had to fight and establish our campaign. History, now this is a funny thing. You have Muslim countries to the west of us, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and it. Then there's 1,500 kilometers of Hindu majority area. And then you come to East Bengal or Bangladesh now, which is Muslim majority. The Muslim armies came to us from the west. Why is it that those 1,500 kilometers did not also become Muslim and somebody in the east became Muslim? Any ideas? The reason was, and I am a firm believer in Buddhism, so I'm not criticizing Buddhism. Buddhism is a religion of peace. The areas which are Buddhist majority were the ones, because they did not offer resistance and they had an organized establishment, the Muslim armies captured the head and converted the entire people. East Bengal was a Buddhist majority country at the time of the Afghan invasions. 80 horsemen came, and Lakshman Sen, who was the king of Bengal, who was an emperor, those 80 men overthrew him because nobody offered resistance. So ahimsa is an ideal, it's a personal ideal, but it is not an ideal for nations. A nation has to defend itself. Having covered, I won't go to 1911 or something, I'll come to the time of independence. As the brigadier himself said, when the country was being partitioned and Pakistan was going to be in 2 wings, the east wing in Bengal and west wing there, the great statesman Maulana Azad, who himself was a Muslim, said, within 25 years, Pakistan will split into 2. Because culturally, racially, and otherwise, the Bengalis are different from the West Pakistanis. And exactly, he said this in 46, in 71, the country split into two. Now the the thing is that in any nation, anywhere, people have multiple identities. And I'm saying this because this will be relevant to what we speak later on of the situation in Bangladesh. One is our cultural and religious identity. Other is the linguistic and the racial identity. In the case of Bengal, they have a national identity, their language, their music, their culture, and the racial. But there's also an Islamic identity. Today, the battle that is going on in Bengal between the forces of nationalism and the nationalist, the fundamentalist Islamic people. That's the core issue. We'll discuss it later. Having finished with the early geography and history of Bengal, you'll be talking of the events leading up to 71?
So, here, in the events around 1946, in addition to what you've covered, sir, would you like to share, because there are myths around when there are massacres happening now in Bangladesh, many of us question whether it is happening at all, number one. And is there a historical precedent to this, which I refer to as the Meghna Bridge massacres?
Yes, Brigadier, thank you for reminding me. Old age, I suffer from amnesia. In 1949, when the partition was taking place, 48, 49, the Hindus were coming from Pakistan to India, and the Indian Muslims were going there. 2,500 Hindus traveling by train were stopped on a bridge called the Coronation Bridge on the river Meghna at a place called Bhairab Bazaar. The train was blocked on both the sides, and 2,500 Hindu men, women, and children were slaughtered and their bodies thrown into the river. Now, this had very serious repercussions. We almost went to war with Pakistan at that time. But internally, there was another repercussion. Because the news was spreading wildfire and tempers were being aroused and passions were being aroused, Nehru passed the first constitutional amendment bill, which curbed the power of the press. The first bill to curb the power of the press was the first constitutional amendment bill. The story of this bill and its passing is told in a wonderful book called The 16 Stormy Days. It talks about the debates in Parliament on this thing, written by a person called Tripurdaman Singh, who incidentally happens to be my nephew, and this book is being sold all over the world.
So then coming to around 1971, sir, my understanding is that initially there was lack of global understanding and attention to the adverse circumstances being generated and magnified in East Pakistan. And then, ultimately, how did the Mukti Bahini come up? What was the government of India's role? What was the Indian military's roles?
I'll come to the military role later, but rightfully Brigadier said that there was lack of understanding, not lack of understanding, everybody knew what was happening, but there was lack of sympathy for the people of Bangladesh and the suffering that they were undergoing from the West, Western countries, America and all, because Pakistan at that time was a member of something called the Central Treaty Organization, CENTO, which was led by the Americans and the British, and also SEATO, Southeast Asian Treaty Organization. Whether it was defunct by then or not, I'm not too sure. So they were supporting Pakistan, and in spite of the reports coming in the press from even the official sources of the consulate in Dhaka, Nixon and Kissinger chose to ignore it because Kissinger and Nixon had a different mind. Pakistan was acting as the bridge for their connection to China. But that's another story. We don't want to get involved in too many stories. But 2-3 events happened which brought the Western public attention into the notice of the Western public and changed their mood. First was Jagjivan Ram, who was the defense minister, visited Agartala, where everybody, both from the Indian Army and the Mukti Bahani, was saying, oh, we have done this, we have done this. He said, all very well, but you have to do something which will catch the eyeballs of the foreign press. So promptly what the Mukti Bahani did was, they got hold of a British tea planter and his wife and killed them. That was big news. That was the first time a foreigner was killed. But subsequent to that, some events took place which are very important. Senator Edward Kennedy, who was the younger brother of President Kennedy, he, with a part of about 48 journalists, other American politicians, and the World Bank team were visiting Dhaka. A young man called Chaudhry Maya, who happens to be my friend, at that time he was a student leader, 19 years old, threw a grenade in the lobby of the Dhaka Intercontinental Hotel. Now, because there were about 50-odd American press, congressmen, and others present there, this was highlighted. It caused no casualties, but these days battles are not only won in the battlefield, battles are also won in the minds of the public perception. This highlighted what was happening in Bangladesh. Second thing was, a month later, Ravi Shankar got hold of his friend George Harrison, the Beatles lead, whom they used to teach the guitar, the sitar to organize a concert for Bangladesh in Madison Gardens in New York. All the world's biggest musicians, Bob Dylan, Akbar Ali Khan, George Harrison, and a whole host of them assembled there. The concert was a sellout, so they had a repeat performance the next day. This got the youth involved. The album became a record-selling album.
So what in effect, sir, has brought out is Jagjivan Ram as defense minister understood the lack of international focus on the issues of East Pakistan and their adverse effect on India ipso facto. And with these three things that is brought out, this adverse lack of attention situation was reversed.
Yes.
Thereafter, what about the next phases when we come to 71 war proper, and immediately after that, when we are talking about the power dynamics during the period of the few months before the war, your relationship with Major Zia, and the example of the best example of world governance that I mentioned, throw some light on that, sir. I'm sure
Okay.
the audience won't know many.
Okay, first we'll come to Zia, because actually the story of 71, as far as I'm concerned, starts with Zia on the 7th of April 71. Zia-ur Rahman was a major then. Subsequently, he became president, the chief of the army staff, and later on president of Pakistan. Not president of Pakistan, but president of, there was another Zia president in Pakistan, but this is Zia-ur Rahman in Bangladesh. He crossed over from Chittagong hill tracks to my battalion's location in Tripura. And for the next 3 months, off and on, he spent the night with me. We undertook a few operations, but Zia-ur Rahman left his wife behind. She refused to come over. At that time also, she had pro-Pakistani leanings, which she still has. She was taken under the wing of the Pakistani chief of intelligence in East Pakistan, Colonel Muhammad Taj. When he returned to West Pakistan, she stayed with Brigadier Aslam. She was a beautiful lady, could sing very well. And so even at that time, during the freedom struggle and after independence, there was a strong element, a large element in East Pakistan or Bangladesh, which tended to be pro-Pakistani. Now, I go back to the music part of it, a little anecdote. Like all we didn't have television in the old days. It was just All India Radio or Radio Ceylon that we picked up. All these radio stations would have a signature tune. Dhaka was closest to us, so we could hear Radio Dhaka to listen to some music. And their signature tune was always something from Rabindra Sangeet. And I used to love watching it. I'm still listening to Rabindra Sangeet. It is my favorite melody, Rabindra Sangeet. Now, Pakistanis realized that music enhances your national identity. Don't you feel when your national anthem is played, automatically your foot starts tapping? Your blood starts pulsating? Does it or does it not? So they changed the signature tune to a song by another Bengali lady, very famous actress and singer, Geeta Dutt. How many of you have heard of Geeta Dutt? Quite a few. And you know what her song was? It was aimed at the Bengali public. Mera Sundar Sapna Beet Gaya. But the Pakistani babus were like our babus. They didn't understand that the Bengalis didn't understand Hindi or Urdu. The only ones who could understand Hindi or Urdu was the Pakistan army. So it was, Tumhara Sapna Beet Gaya, not the Bengalis.
So, when all this was happening, how did the war end? And normally, if you see history, what has happened after wars? The invader, or if it is America, it's never the invader, it's always the democratic introducer, though they may have killed millions. So the freedom, do they leave? Do they leave ever? How long did India take to hand over governance of the newly liberated East Pakistan on the 16th of December 1971? And then what happened, sir?
Okay, I'll come to it. I'll gloss over in 2 minutes the events of the war. The war, although officially started on the 4th, but in my sector it started on the 1st of December. By the biggest obstacle between us and Dhaka was the Meghna River, which we crossed on the 9th by helicopters. These are serious operations which cannot be explained simply in it. On the 13th of December, our army was on the outskirts of Dhaka, and we had entered our patrols, our forward troops had entered the outskirts of Dhaka. That is, in less than 2 weeks, we had reached Dhaka. Thereafter, it was a question of time when the Pakistan army would surrender. But here it is interesting that capturing Dhaka and liberating the whole of Bangladesh was not our objective. Those were not our orders. Our orders were just to capture enough areas for the refugees to return to Bangladesh, to East Pakistan, parts of thing. And Dhaka and liberating the whole country was not our aim. I'll read out to you what, and this is in a letter by Indira Gandhi herself. Mrs. Gandhi replied to the letter of General Hell dated 7 June 1979. The aim was to not to enable...
1971.
No, this is a letter
Okay.
after the war to General Hell in reply to his question to her. The aim was to enable 10 million refugees to return in safety to Bangladesh and to ensure the security of our own borders. No mention is made of Dhaka or liberating all territory. This is reinforced by, in the biography of Air Chief Marshal Lal, who was the chief of their staff. He writes, "Here I must clarify one doubt that has existed in my mind, also in the minds of others, as to what were our objectives of 1971 war. As defined by the chiefs of staff and by each respective chief, it was to gain as much ground as possible in the east, to neutralize the Pakistani forces, to the extent we could establish, and to establish a base, if it was possible, for a state in Bangladesh. That the possibility that Pakistani forces in East Pakistan would collapse altogether, as they did, and that Dhaka would fall, and the whole would be available for the freedom movement in East Pakistan, was not considered that something that was likely to happen."
So, the point I was thinking that sir is going to bring out here, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that 22nd of December 1971, General Sagat handed over control to the government in exile which was in Kolkata. It was brought to Dhaka. Am I correct, sir?
Yes,
Please.
I'll elaborate on that. 16th of December, surrender takes place. Exactly a week later, on 22nd of December, General Sagat, in spite of his orders, gets the Bangladesh government, elected representatives of the Bangladesh government in exile to Dhaka and hands over control of Bangladesh to them, to the elected representatives of Bangladesh. As a counterfoil to it, the Americans entered Europe in the Second World War in 1944. Are they still there or not? They're still there.
Think about this. This is, in my mind, a sterling example of ethical governance by this Desh, Bharat. Think about it. We were at the crest. 1 week transfer of power. What ethics? I teach ethics as a professor. Second thing I want to bring out here. Understand that even at that time, whilst this government in exile, which was Awami League, which is Sheikh Hasina, who had now fled on the 5th of August 24, this became pro-India. But even at that time, the new Bangladesh army, there were deep schisms, fault lines within them. Something on that, sir.
Yes. The so-called Mukti Bahani consisted of two elements. One were the soldiers of erstwhile Pakistan, Bengali soldiers, who had defected and come over to our side. The others were civilian students and others, the guerrilla fighters who took up arms. So there were two elements to it. After independence, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and we also disarmed the students, and the others were taken up arms, law and order situation, and kept the East Bengal Army. Now in this East Bengal Army, after the prisoners were repatriated, again there were two elements. One who had defected to India and come over during the freedom struggle and took part in the freedom struggle, and the others who did not take part in the freedom struggle but joined Bangladesh after it was given independence. There was a division between these two people which has lasted and which is one of the, again, causes for what is happening now.
So in effect, you realize that these loyalty divisions are not a new creation. And now let us turn to events after 5th of August 2024, or the events immediately before that. That was all on the news. It's recent. You all know how the students' process started, the genesis of it, what the Supreme Court said, the order was stayed, and then what happened. You are aware of what America wanted St. Martin's Island as a static aircraft carrier to monitor China. China itself was upset with Sheikh Hasina because Sheikh Hasina had cut short her visit to China by 1 day. Why had she cut it short? She was promised 4 billion but given 400 million only. So with all that, she landed up in a situation where America was anti her and they had sent Donald Lu to their country, to Bangladesh. He has signed an agreement there, Donald Lu, the regime change expert from America. And here China was against them because she had repaid the 4 billion loan which China had given for the bridge construction. And China wanted that loan not to be repaid so that they can stay under the thumb. Sheikh Hasina was smart. She said, no, I want to repay this loan. So with all this dynamics happening and her having to leave, the smartest thing she did was not sign a letter of resignation. Which means today, anything in Bangladesh is not the legally elected government. So now please tell us something about the power dynamics happening now and the impact of the Islamic control of Bangladesh.
Thanks to American support, intervention, and the Pakistani intervention, the Islamists have got the upper hand. The students are the front face. Financed from earlier America's George Soros and the deep state and whatever, it is all true. But they are the frontal face of it. The political parties are generally nationalistic. Now this division between nationalism and the wider Islamic, what they call the Ummah, is prevalent in all Islamic countries. In Syria, Iraq, there are the nationalists, and there's other ones who want to re-establish the Caliphate. What's happening in West Asia is essentially a battle for the Caliphate.
So here,
How long will it, sorry. Now the question is, we know what has happened. Now, but this present government, as the Brigadier said, is an illegitimate government. It is not elected. It has not come into power with any degree of, the previous government having been resigned or anything. They've gained control with the help of the army. But the army is being clever. They understand the people, that the present government doesn't have legitimacy and is not having the support of the majority of the people. So they're laying back at the back and controlling it by remote control. So here in Bangladesh, we have three elements now. The Bangladesh army, which is trying to be neutral. We have the fundamentalist Islamic element, and we have the nationalistic element. The battle is between these three forces, but there's a wider impact, irrespective of who controls Bangladesh, which government comes into it, is the economic factor. Remember, Bangladesh is surrounded on three sides by India: west, north, and east. It is dependent on India for food. It is dependent on India for energy. It is dependent on India for cotton, which is, cotton garments are the biggest export in the world and only foreign exchange earner. It was dependent, or still partly dependent, on illegal smuggling of beef cattle to Bangladesh, and also allowing Bangladeshi illegal migrants to come to India. The good thing of it is, because we had good relations with Sheikh Hasina, we were partly turning a blind eye to illegal migration. There was talk, but physically we were not doing it. We have now put a stop to it. We are not allowing any East Bengali to come to India, be it Muslim or Hindu.
so how do you see the future of Bangladesh? There is a flux. There is the Awami League, there is the BNP, there is the Jamaat-e-Islami, there is a students which is a facade for the deep state,
Yes.
there is Indian interest, there is Chinese interest, there is American interest, there is an economic thing where if they have an enmity with India, it's very bad for them, but it's also bad for us because we don't want China to be there. So this Maggi noodle spaghetti soup, how do you unravel it?
Firstly, my own conjecture is that there will be elections. They should have already have held it in the future, and they will make sure that Khalida Zia's party comes into power. And Khalida Zia tends to be a little pro-Pakistan. Not wholly, but slightly pro-Pakistan. The Awami League, which has the majority of the support, will fight it. There will be a civil war fighting. The Pakistan army will try and intervene. The Bangladesh army will try and intervene between the two parties. And it also poses a slight security threat to us. The Bangladesh army has 9 infantry divisions, which is a very potent force. It's about this equivalent to the amount of divisions that we have in that area. So it is a security threat to us.
We have no idea what history is being taught to them. When I went to deliver a lecture at the NATO Center of Terrorism, it's a center of excellence on defense against terrorism. And where is it located? In Turkey. And who was my co-speaker? The former Defense Secretary of Pakistan. And who do I meet there apart from all Islamic countries? And Turkey has very good relations with Pakistan. Who do I meet there? Bangladeshi officers. And it was such a treat when they said, "Sir, you've opened our eyes. This is not what we are taught. And you are saying this in a hall full of Islamic people." I said, here is the evidence. Because we have professors from Morocco, Algeria, all Muslim countries. So the point is that history which has been taught to them, like in our case, many things have been hidden. In their case, many things have been whitewashed. So with that, I think the problems, before I open the house, I want to say one thing and I want to ask one thing. I want to say that the problem Bangladesh is facing and will continue to face is the struggle to counter radicalization. India is also facing some of it. They will face it or are facing it much more intensely. The second thing I want to tell you, look at Iran. If you see pictures of Iran of 50 years ago, the ladies are wearing short skirts. Then came this era of burqa hijab. And then came the area of women throwing away their hijab. Yes or no?
Yes.
Major thing. Bangladesh, the economic workforce has a lot of women. When you have radicalization, you will not allow women to work. Think Afghanistan, Taliban. When you don't allow women to work, they will protest.
The economy will collapse.
Economy will collapse. More importantly, like Iran, where they get inspiration from now, the women of Bangladesh, I hope that they protest. So with this, my question is, 1971, India created post-Second World War history by taking 93,000 prisoners of war. Pakistan managed to have 54 of ours. We gave back all 93,000, but did not get back 54? Excuse me? Your views on this, sir? Is the data that I'm saying right?
Yes, that was right. Some prisoners were retained by Pakistan, and that is 54. Some were repatriated to India. But the issue is, and these are ethical questions. As per the Geneva Conventions, we were bound to return those prisoners to them. In fact, we held them over for more than a year in spite of the Geneva Conventions. So it was a morally justifiable answer. But besides these 93,000 prisoners, we had, and which nobody unfortunately is talking about, we had 5,000 square kilometers of Pakistani territory in Sindh in our hands. Why did we return that? That we were not morally bound to return. And that question has to be asked.
So now, with this, because this is something which hurts me. I know the grandchildren of some. Imagine a young officer or a soldier who was between 18 to 21 years old. Jawans come in at 17, 18 years. The 71 war is now 54 years old. So that man, if he is alive, is 75 years old. Many of them would have died of mental trauma and madness. What have we done? I mean, I have approached my friends in America and they have got a group going, but fundamentally this narrative hasn't taken traction. What about these 54? Abhinandan, with the pressure from India, we were able to get back. It was my birthday, so I remember 28th of February. He was there 2 days. And Rajat Sharma said, ये अभी तक 9 बजे तक बैठे हुए हैं उनको अभिनंदन जी का अभिनंदन करने. मैंने कहा मैं बैठा रहूँगा, मुझे उम्मीद है आज रात को आएंगे ये. And he came back. But what about our 54? From 54 years ago? It's very sad. It's a blot on the national will, in my opinion. Sorry for being so blunt. Now, we have still 5 minutes, wherein I want, whatever you want to ask, sir, he's a veritable encyclopedia. Please go ahead. Questions? Yes, the gentleman in the black shirt. Keep your question very short. Introduce yourself. Take your name. And a question should not be a thesis.
Jain sir, I am Anjanya Chaturvedi. I have 2 questions. My very first question is this a part of Arab, dummy of Arab Spring?
आप हिंदी में भी अनुवाद कर क्या व्याख्या कर सकते हैं अपनी.
Arab Spring का एक part या एक model हुआ क्या जो बांग्लादेश में हुआ? There is a very first point. Or can we see another 1971? Thank you very much.
In a way, it's not directly linked with the Arab thing, but there is an upsurge of Islamic identity that is going on, but not directly. But at a certain level, you can say that this is a sideshow to it thing. And the second, what was your second question?
Balkanization of Bangladesh.
No, what do you mean? But that another war, or are you talking of Bangladesh splitting into different parts? Well, frankly, one Bangladesh is a headache enough. We don't want 10 Bangladesh, greater headaches.
Next question, gentleman in the, yeah.
सर सोल्जर्स बोला कि 93,000 सोल्जर्स हमारे ऊपर बाउंडेशन थे जिनेवा कन्वेंशन की वजह से जिसके कारण हमको उनको रिटर्न करना पड़ा क्या पाकिस्तान पे बाउंडेशन नहीं था जिनेवा कन्वेंशन
There was, and that was a weakness of our government at that time.
अगला प्रश्न जी.
Jain sir. So my name is Dageshwari Anjana. So I have two questions. So question number one, in 1971 we played a very crucial part in liberating East Pakistan, which is Bangladesh today. But this time around when you knew that there are international players in the field, China and USA, the democratic deep state, do you think that this time around India was perhaps a bit lenient or didn't take the uprising seriously? And the second question, in the beginning of the discussion, you said ki Indian Army is league apart from other armies. So what makes Indian Army so different from other armies? Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
I'll answer your question. Your first question is, repeat it again.
So was India lenient this time towards the uprising?
No, first question.
Yes, sir.
Lenient towards the uprising or return of prisoners or what was it?
So the current, what happened like a
Yes,
few months
okay,
back.
I now remember it. I'm sorry. Thing is, yes, we knew, my friends in Bangladesh were warning me that this is happening for the last 3 years. There were several factors. There's something called incumbency factor. This was Sheikh Hasina's third continuous thing. She's been Prime Minister 5 times. So there were people who were against her. It happens to it. See, Modi came with a thumping majority in the first term, second term. This time it's a coalition government. This is a natural phenomena that happens in all democracies. People get fed up of the thing and they want a change. So there was an element that wanted change. The government of India, yes, they should have been more proactive in trying to suppress the Islamists and keep the Pakistani elements out of things. That they should have done. Second question?
Why is Indian Army special?
Well, there's several reasons for it. I'm an army man, and that is something that we need to be proud of. We are a disciplined army. This army has no ambitions of taking over the government. At one time in Asia and Africa, we were probably the only democracy that lived, where the army was not interfering in the government.
Okay, let me answer this with 3 points because yours is your thinking is clear, your questions are clear. I'll answer it in your wavelength. When you talk of why was India lenient to the uprising, please understand, हमारे घर में भी आग लगी हुई है. He mentioned to the Modi thing, there is a deep state action which is very manifest in India, and we are all spending 6 to 7 hours every day studying what is happening. You are also aware that America, there is not one homogeneous political bias towards India for or against. There are some actors who are for us. There are very many actors who are vocally against us, but there are even more dangerous non-vocally against us. There are even more dangerous who are financially against us, George Soros types. So, even when India wants to do something, we really have a bit of a fire in our own backyard. Please remember this. Don't underestimate that fire. That's the point on leniency, why we were lenient to the uprising. He's already said that yes, the government could have been a little more proactive. Why is Indian Army special? 3 points. 1, bravery. When you see, and mine was the first battalion in Siachen, 1984, night 2nd, 3rd June 1984, I attacked and I took over a post of the Pakistani commandos in an area which had been war gamed in the air-conditioned offices of Delhi that no human being can survive. Forget live, forget attack, and forget win. And 1962, 18th of November, Chushul, the exact place name is Rizangla, please Google it. There was a company of the Indian Army which lost all 113 men fighting against thousands of Pakistanis which came in waves. And we've kept there, somebody had a 5 rupee note with a bullet through it. Somebody had a chai peete hain mestin mein, dabba hota hai, aluminium ka, bullet through it. Somebody had a magazine, bullet through it. Some bodies were recovered after rigor mortis has set in. So the finger is in the trigger. He has died in this pose. Bravery, ladies and gentlemen, unparalleled. Second proof which I gave on TV. Please, when you look at data, because it's a very good thing when people ask me data and they say, sir, before we can ask you, you give the data, aapko counter kaise kare? In a company, there is 2 officers officially and 120 men. So, obviously, the casualty should be in that pro rata ratio. What is the casualty ratio? 10 times that. Indian Army, sir, let me finish this. Indian Army officers lead from the front, which he mentioned earlier. I am giving you proof of that by data. Indian Army officers are leading the men perpetually from the front, which is why the officer-Jawan casualty ratio is highly skewed in the Indian Army. More officers are dying than the statistical pro rata would indicate. That is the third part. And the fourth thing, why Indian Army is special, is the Indian Army leadership has kept the Indian Army out of politics. The credit for this to our initial generals, that they kept the Indian Army totally out of politics. How many serving officers do you see in Bhopal Lit Fest? We are part of the organizing committee for this. We are both founder members, Niharika and myself. How many serving officers? But you see serving officers from all other services. We are just out of it. And these are the 3 reasons that I say that the Indian Army is special. No parallels in the world. Back to you, sir.
About the bravery that you said, I'll quote the figures of my own battalion, my own regiment. In a regiment, there are 5 majors, 8 captains, and half a dozen. Out of 5 majors, we had 4 majors as casualties. Out of 8 captains, 50%, 4 officers, 4 captains as casualties. These are the casualty rates of officers in a short duration war of 2 weeks.
You know, one doesn't want to give personal examples, but he's a VRC, I'm a Sena Medal and Bar. We've all been shot up in war and we've refused evacuation and all, but leave those stories apart. Next question, please. Otherwise, I think the time is up and I as an organizer will be the last one to delay a session. Yeah, anything else? Yeah. Anybody else after this? Okay, I think the audience is satiated. After this, we'll have your quiz question. Yeah.
Hello, sir. I would like to...
Please identify yourself and start.
I'm Sudhir. I'm a PhD student. I would like to know your views on the current situation. See, technically, now Pakistan, Bangladesh, China and US, they are on other side. And then India is alone. So how the international politics comes in?
Okay. So I won't say that we are alone. We have friends. Ladies and gentlemen, please understand that because of social media, a lot of things have come out in the open, whereas diplomacy is a game best played not in the open. There is a paradox here. Diplomacy, if there is a marriage, your sister is about to get married, will you advertise it in the whole colony and the whole khandan before the roka? नहीं कुछ गड़बड़ हो जाएगा बाद में करेंगे. But today social media, before we can have a roka with America, some social media will leak it out, yes or no? So that's a problem. We are not totally alone. Our diplomats, our governments have done a good job. The negatives, bad news is good copy, basics of journalism, that is one part. But yes, there is an adverse situation against India. The fundamental point you are making is right. And therefore the need for national unity, which we do not have. He mentioned Ummah. It translates to Muslim Brotherhood, and I've said it publicly on TV, all channels, repeatedly. The fundamental concept is there is religious unity which is above nationalism in some religions. Unfortunately, in our country, we are a divided lot. The good part is I see a lot of people across denominations and religions speaking for India, across religions, and I really salute them. You go to my Facebook page, you will find Supreme Court lawyers of the second largest religion, third largest religion. They are speaking very strongly for India, and we have photographs together. So all is not lost, but yes, We are in a delicate situation. We need to stand united as a country. Yeah, I think, sir, with that,
Thank you very much. The session was great yet intense. We thank Brigadier Agarwal and Major Singh for the insightful session. I'd move on next to the quiz question. Whosoever has the answer to the question would raise their hand first and would get the opportunity to get a book by Dale Carnegie. The question is, what was the name of the military operation carried out by the Pakistan Army on March 25th, 1971? Anybody? Yes, sir, he has. Yes, absolutely right. Please come up on the stage for the photo op. Big round of applause.
also repeat the answer, no?
The answer is Operation Searchlight. Sir, identify yourself.
I am Anjana Chaturvedi.
Come up on stage.
Jain sir. Jain sir.
Jai Hind. Congratulations. Thank you, sir. Please accept the book.
Thank you, sir.
From our
Mr. Chaturvedi is the winner. Will take home the inspiring book Living an Enriched Life by Dale Carnegie, a timeless guide to building self-confidence, setting goals, and cultivating a positive attitude for more fulfilling life. Time for a memento giving. As we conclude this deeply enriching session, I would like to request co-founding member Niharika Singh, a member of society, to please present our esteemed speakers with a memento as a token of our gratitude. Can we please have a big round of applause for this great and insightful session that we have just had. Padma Shri Bhil artist Bhuri Bai has created this artwork for Bhopal Literature Festival 2025, depicting the connection between nature, earth and human being and the environment. The circularity inherent and imperative to our existence. To our incredible speakers, thank you for sharing your wisdom, creativity and insights which have deeply inspired us. This memento is a tribute to your contributions and your lasting impact of your words on your hearts and mind. Thank you, Major